And to tell us more about the Iowa Caucuses, we now connect with Dr. Hee-eun, Professor of Law at Handong International Law School, to tell us more about this. So, Dr. Lee, the high-stakes contest in Iowa provides us with a clue of who will become a major contender for the Democrat nomination. So, who do you see as the favorites, and what are the core issues that they're bringing to the table?
Well, thanks for having me on the program. The front runners nationally at this point are Vice President Biden, Senator Sanders, and Senator Warren, with Mayor Buttigieg coming in at fourth. However, with respect to Iowa, most polling has indicated that Sanders will win. So the basic message that has been coming out from the candidates is that he or she is the candidate that can defeat President Trump in November in a head-to-head matchup. So I think the issues that are making the most headlines are the environment, immigration, healthcare, and education. And most candidates are essentially staking out a position that is essentially opposite of President Trump's policies. But probably the most significant issue that is not getting the attention that it used to is the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is currently experiencing its longest expansion ever, with steady growth in GDP, jobs, and wages. So this likely will be a very complicated issue for the Democrats unless they can make President Trump's character and leadership a sticking point.
Well, Dr. E, in the polls leading up to Monday evening, Bernie Sanders came out on top, like you said. So what do you think is behind the swell of support for him?
Well, Sanders' support is primarily coming from young people and probably the more extreme and radical elements of the Democratic Party that really want to challenge the Democratic Party establishment that is basically rooting for Vice President Biden to win. So I think this is essentially a little like the battle being waged for the soul of the Republican Party about 4 years ago. So in 2016, when we saw then candidate Trump run for election, he was the anti-establishment Republican candidate. So today for the Democrats, you have Bernie Sanders, who is much in the same way, in the same position as then candidate Trump, who was battling against the Republican establishment. So I think essentially there are many Democrats who feel really disaffected by the Democratic Party elites and really want to go beyond what President Obama did during his presidency. So I think the impetus for the surge for Sanders is that basically there are a lot of people who want to see a big change in the Democratic Party.
All right, now this year I think we could say the Iowa caucuses have been somewhat overshadowed by U.S. President Donald Trump's impeachment trial. So how will this affect the Democrats' campaign? And I mean, what kind of message do you think is needed to sway the voters?
Well, interestingly, I actually don't think that the impeachment trial is going to have really any real impact on at least the Democrat presidential primary, since I think most Democrats really have already formed their views on President Trump, and regardless, they won't vote for him. So the real question is, what impact is the trial going to have on independent voters and moderate Republicans? So given that the news cycle changes so rapidly and that much can happen from now until November when the election actually takes place, it's quite possible that the impeachment is treated rather negligibly given the political nature of the trial and other issues that begin to dominate the news cycle. In fact, arguably, I think the impeachment may serve to help President Trump by firing up his base, and they may be even more enthusiastic to vote for him in the coming election. So even though the national polls put President Trump below 50%, if the American economy continues to be successful in 2020 and President Trump's base is sufficiently stable, I think the eventual Democratic nominee will have a challenging path to the nomination.
All right, Doctor, we'll now have to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for your time, Professor E.
Thanks for having me.